Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the weekly live stream. Actually, I do it a couple of times a week where we talk about job search, and it's a live Q&A. So that means you get to ask me questions. This is a little bit of an exception. Normally, in this time slot, I'd be doing a live stream about entrepreneurship, but that's been preempted this week. To return next week in favor of this, How to Get Hired, where we talk about job search. And this is episode number 139 of How to Get Hired. This episode is called What Not to Say in a Job Interview. So we're going to be talking about that right off the hop. But as always, a special shout out goes out to all my YouTube channel members. Membership has its privileges. Thank you so much for your support. Also to my Patreons and my super thanks donors. Those are always nice to get. And my participants and viewers, thank you very much for being here. If you're seeing my face right now, you should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face. And get in the chat box. And if you are a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in there and ask questions. And today, because the title of this is called What Not to Say in a Job Interview, put your suggestion. What shouldn't you say in a job interview? And we will discuss it. Okay. Obvious stuff, not so obvious stuff, or stuff you theorize or conjecture that might fall into that category. Yeah, let's get started. I'm a little out of breath. I had to sort of hurry up and get the hell back to my office to be able to do this. And I'm a little out of breath. So fortunately, I'm in the peak of physical condition. So that's not any kind of issue there. So I'm happy to say. Okay, let's get started. I see we have some people in the chat already. Arvinder Singh is here. Arvinder says, I completed my MBA in October 2024 after 11 years in sales/operations. I paused my job search till August 2025 to care for my mother. In an HR screen, mentioning this hurt momentum. How should I frame it honestly? Okay, Arvinder, here's the deal. What you're doing in a job interview is you're selling yourself, okay? How do you get someone to buy something? Well, it's a combination of having a good thing that they would want, plus the ability to be able to sell it, to persuade them that it's a good thing, right? You kind of need both of those, right? Now, you are selling yourself in a job interview and you already have a lot of value, okay? So that's not the issue. What you have to do now is sell yourself, is persuade them that you're the person they should go with, right? Excuse me. Jeez. Okay. So here's the deal. If you say something like, well, I had to take some time off to care for an ailing family member, the way recruiters think, and sometimes hiring managers too, is they see that. You'll have to excuse me. I'm about to go into a coughing fit here. God. You remember what I said about peak physical condition, right? Well, here we go. Okay, so if you mention that you took some time off to care for an ailing family member, the way that's going to be interpreted, it's going to be perceived, is you are a risky proposition. You are a risky candidate. Because if they hire you, it seems like there's a really good chance that you may have to drop everything and go and care for this sick family member, right? And that's the problem. Man, I apologize. There we go. So that's the way it's perceived. Now, my question to you is, do you have to mention this, right? And I think you're assuming that you do, but the reality is that you don't, okay? First of all, this is none of their concern. What you do outside of work, is your affair, and they are not entitled to that information. You can voluntarily disclose it if you wish, but they are not entitled to it, right? So the thing is, if they're going to see this as a risk factor that's going to hurt your chances of getting hired, then it would be probably wise to keep it confidential, right? Don't reveal this, right? If they ask you something related to it, they say like, why did you leave your last job or something like that, where, the answer would have been, well, I left so I could, take care of a sick family member or something like that. Maybe just keep that to yourself, right? Just say, I was ready to do more, or something like that. Just leave it at that, right? You don't have to volunteer this if it's going to hurt your chances, right? And the thing is, it doesn't actually hurt your chances. The only reason it hurts your chances is because they are making assumptions about you, right? Based on statistical probability and human weakness. They are making assumptions about you, and they're lumping you into like, people that have a sick family member, they tend to get sick again. Therefore, we assume that's going to happen to you, and therefore we're also going to assume that if that happens, you'll have to take time off work, and then you won't be there for us when we need you, right? That's all a string of assumptions, right? And that's why they're regarding you as a riskier candidate. And so if they're going to make these kind of assumptions, I would recommend you don't volunteer this information, okay? So that's how I would say. You see, the thing is, when you say, how should I frame it honestly, right? This sounds really bad to say this, but that kind of concerns me, because what assumptions now I'm making about you is that you're the type of person that's going to start with a bunch of disclaimers and say, well, in the interest of honesty, I think it's only fair that and then you're going to say a bunch of bad things about you, or things that are likely to get them to assume they're going to be problems, even though they may not be, right? And that's going to undermine your entire effort, your entire sales effort, meaning that you're going to blow the interview, right? Because even though you're qualified and you're talented and you've got all the soft skills and everything, they're still going to say no, and they're going to go with somebody else because they're making assumptions about you based on these little things that you volunteered, right? Which in reality are probably not going to be a problem, but thanks to this way of handling it is now going to blow your interview, okay? So that's what I would say. In short, this is none of their business. You don't have to volunteer it. Especially when it's going to be taken the wrong way. You don't have to say any of this stuff. So being honest in the sense that, you feel you must disclose everything negative about you up front, that's really going to hurt you, so don't do it. Rourke is here. Rourke is a member. Hello, Rourke. It's good to hear from you again. Rourke says, I found out I should not say the last job was a toxic environment and I had to leave suddenly. Absolutely. Yeah, because you know what that's conveying about you, right? You see, you and me, Rourke, we understand each other and we go back, like way back to the good old days, right? So I know that you're a fine, upstanding person, right? But when you go to a job interview and you're talking to a recruiter and a hiring manager and you don't know these people and they don't know you, right? All you know is that you're someone called Rourke and you went down to the interview, they met you for the first time and you started talking about how you didn't get along with people and you had to leave jobs, right? So that's forming their first impression of you, right? Negative, negative, negative. So they're going to assume, Rourke, yeah, you're the type of person that leaves things and doesn't get along with people. And you have to leave entire organizations because you don't get along, right? That's the assumption they're going to make when they hear you say this stuff, right? So we all know that it's not accurate, but the problem is they don't know you. You're making a first impression. When you lead with this, that's the impression it conveys, right? So, the rule is don't say anything negative. Don't say anything negative about yourself, and don't say anything negative about other people. Even when they bait you into it, they say like, what's the thing that, really bugged you about your last boss, right? Like they're asking for you to give them negative things, right? So it feels like in order to satisfy them, you have to give them something negative. Well, that's a trap. That's a trick question, right? The way you answer those is you say, well, I don't really have anything about my last boss that I hated. We actually got along really well, so sorry, I can't be more of help, to you. I got along with them and then you start talking about how you got along with them. I got along with them on a personal level. We both like sports and stuff. So, we would kind of talk about that, when we're not doing our work. And I found that they had a very easy management style. They would tend to, get people to participate in the decisions, or failing that, they would at least explain the decision so everyone could understand. So I really appreciated that. And so there really wasn't much that, we really didn't see eye to eye on, and that's how you answer those type of questions, right? You wriggle out of their trap. Excuse me. Tong says, perhaps it could be mentioned that the sick person kicked the bucket. Okay, like maybe, and from a technical point of view, you could say, well, that person died, so that will not be a complication to me doing my job. I understand that from a technical point of view, it might seem like a good idea. The problem is that when you bring up death, especially the death of a loved one, you start a meeting by saying, hi, it's great to meet you. Yeah, my mother died yesterday, but, I'm really looking forward to hearing about this job. Obviously I'm exaggerating, but you see the effect that has also. It creates awkwardness, and it creates a whole new problem, right? As I turn down my camera brightness here. The sun has just come out, proverbially. Rourke says, I feel that I aced the what are your strengths/weaknesses question today in the interview. Good. Yeah, that can be quite involved because it's 2 questions and each question is a long answer a lot of times. Okay, so we got to the end of the questions for now. Now, I had actually prepared a whole bunch of stuff to talk about concerning the topic today. What not to say in a job interview. I did a video on this not too long ago, like maybe 3 or 4 months ago, something like that. Anyway, just very, very quickly, I'm going to start going through these. So what I had done in my video is I had broken down the things you shouldn't say into categories, right? Like, for example, the categories were a lack of research. So you didn't do basic research about the job before you showed up to interview for it, right? A lack of awareness. You don't understand who the company is and things like this. Lack of preparation, right? You didn't do any kind of preparation or rehearsal before you go down to a job interview. That can be fatal in terms of getting the job. Lack of commitment to the job or the organization, meaning that, you don't give a rat's ass about these people. You just want money. You don't really care about this company. You don't care about this particular job. You'll do whatever the hell people want you to do as long as they pay you, right? Now, is that the worst sin in the world? No, it isn't, right? We all kind of feel like that to a degree. But the problem is they don't want that. They are, in theory, looking for someone who is suited to this work, who is suited to this job, and is suited to work in this place, in this culture. Right? That's what they're looking for. So when you indicate that that's really not you, that's a problem. Okay? Bad-mouthing people, saying, like throwing people under the bus, saying, oh, my last boss was a jackass, stuff like that. Anyone, bad-mouthing anybody, even when they bait you and then they tell you to tell them the dirt on people, you do it. Disloyal. Giving the impression that, if they hire you, your heart's not going to be in this. You're doing things on the side. You have ambitions to do other things. Disloyalty. That's a red flag. Being arrogant. There's a lot of people that It is a fine line between being confident and sort of explaining what you can do for them and all the skills you have and the value you can add, but not going so far that it comes across as like very arrogant, right? So there's a bit of a fine line there, and some people flip over into being arrogant. Lying, where it's pretty obvious that you're just lying right through your teeth, right to their face, that's a red flag. Being desperate, saying things that indicate that you're desperate, like I'll do anything, any job, like whatever you want, just hire me, Unprofessional conduct, like dropping F-bombs in job interviews, things like this. And then there's some more exotic stuff, like, for example, all your strengths, all your accomplishments, when they ask you for these, it's strange how all the stuff that you give them is things you've done 10 years ago or more, nothing recent. You see, that would be a bit of a red flag. You should give recent examples, at least somewhat, in job interviews, and having no ambitions beyond this role, or this life, you know what I mean? So those are things that you shouldn't say. So I was going to elaborate on these categories, but let's get to you guys here. Arvinder says, how do you handle, tell me about yourself when there is 11 plus years of work to be summarized plus awards? Well, Arvinder, what did you say earlier? You said you have an MBA. Okay. Well, fire up your MBA skills and learn how to summarize something. Can you not summarize something? Like, I don't know how long your resume is. I don't care how long your resume is, whether it's 1 page or 4 pages. You need to be able to summarize it in 30 seconds, right? So obviously you're going to omit a lot of things that are on your resume, right? A lot of detail. If you only have 10 seconds to summarize who you are, right? It's perfectly possible. You say your name, your tagline, like who you are. I'm a student. I'm a plumber. I'm a teacher who aspires to be a composer. I mean, whatever you are, your tagline, right? And then you give the essentials. Maybe your most advanced education. If you have a master's degree, if you have an MBA, you say that. You don't even have to say where it's from. Just say, I have an MBA. I have 10 years experience working in the field. My most recent position was this, manager of this thing at this company. There you go. There's a 10-second summary of your resume, right? So, if you have 11 plus years of work, you're going to want to summarize that. I would recommend in about like 45 seconds or less. Okay? Which is perfectly possible. Just learn how to do that. Look up how to summarize something and you should be fine. Now, do you really think that a stranger is going to want to sit through every little detail of the last 11 years of your life? No, of course not, right? So there's that. The other element is that, do you really think that a recruiter or hiring manager really care about all the stuff you've done? They don't. The only reason they care about what you've done is how it relates to what you can do for them, right? So giving them like a complete life story is really not necessary. What they really care about, right? The question behind the question is, what can you do for us? So when you put it in those terms, you can see it. It's really not that hard of a thing to communicate, right? So you claim you're from the top 10 business schools globally. Okay, then you shouldn't have a problem doing this. That's what I'd say. Okay, so returning once again to things that you shouldn't say in an interview. We talked about a lack of research. Don't say things like, so what am I going to be doing in this role? Don't act confused about what the role is, okay? Even if they've been vague about it, don't act confused about what it is. in theory, if you had any kind of confusion over what this role is, you need to spend 30 seconds on ChatGPT or on Google learning what that job title in that industry is and what you do. Okay, so don't go in there and go, so what is this role? What am I supposed to be doing? Right? That kind of that signals that you're unsuited for it because you really aren't familiar. Saying like, sorry, what's the job title again? Things like that. Don't say stuff like that. Showing a lack of awareness, saying, I really don't know what this company does. Right? That's bad, right? They expect you to be familiar with their company if you're coming down for a job. If you are not, then that signals that you don't care. Either you don't care at all about this company or this role, or you're too stupid or incapable to do the research. They're both pretty bad, right? So everybody should take like 2 minutes just to research what the company is, like a little bit about the company or organization, what the role is, that kind of stuff. So you go down there prepared, right? And don't say like, no, I've never used your products or services before, right? If they're a business to consumer a product or service company, it's nice to be familiar with what they do, right? If they're an industrial company, so you can't buy their product or service for yourself, but you can say, I'm familiar with it. I understand this is what you guys produce, and this is, what makes it competitive, right? And the more you know about it, the more it'll signal that you care about this job, right? That's the idea. Let's go over to you guys. Alpine's pal says, good morning, Bill. Can you talk about the difference between being honest or being dishonest and taking a point of view? You always hit me with these like philosophical type questions. To me, the worst lie is saying something you can't do or just making up stuff without context. Saying something you can't do. How is that a lie? Like you're saying you can't do it when you can? Is that what you're trying to say? What can you do for us? Great advice. Listen. A lot of people don't understand what a job interview is. A job interview is a sales pitch. The problem is that most people don't work in sales, so you don't recognize that this is the sales process when you see it, right? Like that's the thing, okay? Now, the way sales works is that, I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, oh, it's lying. No, it's not lying. What it is you're trying to persuade someone, that this is the thing for you, right? And how do you do that? Well, you point out all its strengths. You try and make it relatable. And then you try and not mention or minimize any weaknesses it might have, right? So, for example, if someone is trying to sell you a fancy car, like a Porsche, they'll talk about how, how good the acceleration is, right? Like, look, you can go 0 to 60 in a third of a second, whatever, right? They'll talk about how reliable it is. They'll talk about how, luxurious you will feel when you drive it, or, how much of a good feeling you'll get driving it. They'll tell you about the status, that you'll receive from your friends and the public in general when they see you driving this car. You'll be well regarded, right? Now, what are the downsides? Well, the downsides are, first of all, it's very expensive, right? So it's not that they lie about it. That's not sales. Sales is just, you either don't mention it, or you certainly don't say, in the interests of being honest, I want you to know that this car is very expensive, right? If someone is trying to sell you a car successfully, are they going to lead with that? No, they're not, because now you're thinking, okay, this is an expensive car. I'm not really looking for a really expensive car. That's kind of a deal breaker, right? And then they say, oh, well, also, just so you know, this car, it's made in Germany or it's made in some other country. So getting the parts, it's going to be very expensive to get the parts and do maintenance on it. I think you need to know that before we start, in the interests of being honest, right? And then they'll pick out another weakness and they'll say, I hope you're not a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, because if you are, last week, he bought one of these cars and proceeded to wrap it around a tree, right? He crashed it and then complained that the car didn't handle very well and he hates it and he'd never get another one of these for the rest of his life. I don't know if you caught that in the news, but that's what he said, right? So if you hear something about that, I just want to be upfront about it with you, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, what kind of salesperson would be successful leading with this kind of stuff? It's not that you're trying to hide it. It's not that you're being dishonest. It's just that, that's not making a very good impression, right? So this is what's going on in the job interview. You're trying to persuade someone that, they should hire you. Just like I could buy many different types of car. This person is trying to sell me on this particular car, like a Porsche or something? Anyway, yeah, Porsche I think is German, right? Lamborghini, that's Italian. Right? You could buy many different types of car. They're saying, listen, you should forget all those other types of car and buy this one, right? That's exactly what you're doing. You're saying all those other candidates you're talking to, you should forget them and hire me, right? And here's why. Let me make a case for you on why I'm the one you want to go with, right? And then you line up all the strengths and you make it relatable, right? That's what a job interview is. You've got to have a great product and then you got to sell it. Now, you are already a great product. There's an employer out there right now that wants to hire you, just that you're not connected to them, right? But the problem is when you go to a job interview and you lead with all this like stuff in the interests of honesty, I'm going to tell you every bad thing about me. And then you find that they kind of lose all interest in you, eliminate you before you even get a chance to tell them about all the good things, right? So that's what's going on here. You're trying to persuade someone. So when people talk about honesty, that can mean a lot of different things. It can mean like not lying, which I agree with, but some people think it means like, okay, I'm going to tell you a bunch of bad things about me in the interests of honesty and full disclosure. That's hurting you. There will be plenty of time to talk about that stuff later on if you get that far, But right now, you don't want to lead with that. We have a super chat. We have a super chat from, what's this? Doland Drum. Okay. Thank you, Doland. It says, hello, sir. I'm from Punjab, India. I recently bagged an on-site offer from a German company. Your videos helped me a lot in preparing for my interviews. Thank you very much. I highly appreciate your work. Well, thank you very much, Doland. That's very kind of you, and I appreciate that. I'm glad it worked out. So way to go. Yeah. Now, Rourke says, yeah, I prepped for about 6 hours Friday and Saturday for the interview I had this morning. Okay, well, good. It seems like it paid off from what I understand. I guess we'll find out, but it sounds like it's promising so far. Hello to Uni. Leonid Sokolov says, hi, Bill. I've been working for a company for 6+ years and found out that I'm severely underpaid. Bosses tell me they can't increase my salary and they treat everyone this way. What is the best move here? Okay, so how did you find out that you're severely underpaid? This is like in your mind? Okay. I know, I'm getting at you just to prove a point. So here's the thing. There is no absolute right answer for how much value you place on somebody. There isn't. It's all relativistic, right? So the thing is, if you are underpaid, here's how it works. You should be able to get a competing job offer right now if you are indeed severely underpaid, okay? If you can't get a competing job offer for anything more than you're making now, then by definition, you are not underpaid, okay? You are commanding the value that you can command in the open market, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you found out that there are employers across the street, figuratively, who are paying double for people with your skills and experience and education, right? They're paying 200% of what you're making now in your current position. Then it sounds like you're underpaid. What you should be able to do is go and get a job offer from that company across the street. Get an offer in your hand, right? And then when it's you have it in writing and it's approved and signed, then you go to your boss and say, listen, I feel that I'm underpaid. I would like this much money. Can you do it? Okay, that's what you say. And if they say no, you say, okay, not a problem. Just thought I'd ask. Listen, here's my notice. Okay, and then you leave, and then you go to the company that gave you a job offer, right? And that way, you're making what you're worth on an open market, right? Okay, so it's not about persuading anybody, right? If you are indeed underpaid, you should be able to get an offer for what you are actually worth. And one way or another, you'll end up making what you're worth, right? You know, you don't have to persuade anyone. You don't need approval from anyone. You know what I'm saying? That's how these things work. If you can't get another offer, then in what way are you underpaid? Right? By definition, you are not underpaid if you can't get a better job offer or have a better option. Okay? So that's how this stuff works. Okay? So, so there you go. So now you can decide what you feel like doing based on that reality. Hopefully that makes sense. But I hope that you can find another position where they'll pay you what you are actually worth, and then you have the option of going back to your boss, and it doesn't really matter if your boss sees it your way or not. One way or another, you're going to be making what you're worth. So I wish you all the luck in the world, Leonid. Flavio says, hi, good morning. If we are overqualified and hide it, what do you think? So what you're saying is you've got 2 PhDs, but you'd rather sweep the floor. Okay. Well, listen, if that's what you want to do, who am I to judge? You know, it's if you are following your bliss and there's a beauty in sweeping the floor, that it's simple, it's satisfying, you know, and that's just what your calling is and what you enjoy doing. It's stress-free, and, you know, go for it, you know, put yourself up apply for the janitor job or the job of the laborer that sweeps the floor, and leave your PhDs off your resume and go and get it. You know, like, that's the thing. There's no limits, you know, there's no law that says you can't do this. And if this is what you want to do, go ahead. You never know. You might live 10 years longer doing this than what, you know, you would have lived in a very high stress job where you did make more money, but you had a terrible quality of living. You know, you worked yourself to an early grave and stressed yourself out, you know? So go for it. It might be hard to get the job of the floor sweeper when you've got PhDs on your resume. They'll say, no, I'm sorry, you're overqualified. We're looking for someone who, when we hire them, we know they're going to be in this job for several years. And they're suited to this work, and they're not going to complain about this work. And they're going to be happy to get this job, you know? So we won't hire you because if you got a couple of PhDs, we don't think you're any of these things, right? But if you leave the PhDs off your resume, then you could probably get it. So I know that's a ridiculous example, but hopefully you understand the principle behind it. That's what I'd say. JT, my sister told me, don't be afraid to say you're nervous. Horrible advice. Yeah, unfortunately, you see, that kind of works for public speaking, right? Like, if you get up in front of a room full of people and you're really, you don't have very good public speaking skills and you're very nervous, sometimes saying like, oh, you know, I'm really nervous up here. That can go well because a lot of times the audience will sympathize with you and they'll kind of be more with you. The problem is that in a job interview, it's not the same thing. You're making a first impression. You're trying to sell yourself, and that it can come across as like a negative, right? So I agree with you, JT. You probably would not want to say that in a job interview. Do not say that in a job interview. The way to address stress and nervousness and anxiety in a job interview is to rehearse, and you rehearse in a very specific way. You do mock interviews with somebody else. You get somebody else. They could be an HR professional that you pay for, or they could be a friend or family member, but get the other person to pretend to be the interviewer and have them interview you like just as a pretend type thing, and do a lot of those over and over again. And what you'll find is that over time, you will shed your nervousness. And after you've done like 40 interviews, you know the answers to the standard questions backwards, forwards, the confidence will come, and you will be much less nervous when you go to a real interview because you've been through this before many times, right? So that's the way to handle it. Alpine's Pal says, yeah, I kind of do, but in this case, it was more real-world application. I've bought cars, so I really relate to that analogy. Okay, good. Uni says, it has been 3 months searching for a job. Overthink, focus me, think that, can I remember the all task so and so. Fresher. You're starting to lose me on the grammar there, Uni. I'll give you a tip. Just write shorter sentences, one thought per sentence. And even if you don't have command of the language, you can still be understood perfectly. Alpine's Pal. So that basically answers all of those philosophical questions. That was a great answer. Well, thank you. The value of car is not objective, it's subjective. So well, no, it isn't. That's not how that works. So can you admit one or two downsides, but not focus on that? Why? Like, hello, you say you listened to my answer. You say that it was a good answer, but then what you're asking now suggests that you did not understand my point. Okay? Sure, you could do the best sales job in the world, and then if you feel you have a need to tell them something really bad, go ahead. It's not going to be as effective. If you're trying to sell a car and you tell them a bunch of good things about it, but you feel you need to tell them some negatives about the car, there's no law that says you can't. It just won't be as effective. Period. Now, don't take my word for this. I'm not here to argue anyone. Go out and try it. If I can't convince you, go out and do it and do like an A/B test and just see what the results are. Alex says, I'm in a situation where even recruiting companies wait for October to receive job posts. An agency had no job, so I'm obliged to choose one from very few posted. Wrong. You are not limited to these terrible ways of finding a job. Learn about the hidden job market. That's where 80% of the jobs are, if not more. Look there. That's where they are. Okay, you guys know it. If you've been watching my channel here, you know what I'm about to do here. Okay, so of all the jobs that are out there, how many of them are posted in terms of the percentage? I do this almost every live stream now just because I want to make sure people understand that this isn't coming from me. This isn't just my opinion. Okay, only about 20% of jobs are publicly posted. You see that? The remaining 80% are part of the hidden job market. Okay? These jobs aren't advertised and are filled through networking, referrals, or internal promotions. This is why direct outreach and networking can be key strategies when job hunting. There you go. Okay. So first of all, Alex, you're not limited to these terrible ways of getting a job. That's what these recruiting companies would love you to believe. They would love you to think that you have to go through them and they are the gatekeepers of all the jobs out there. They'd love you to think that, right? It's not true. It's not true to an embarrassing degree, right? Most jobs don't go through these clowns, and you don't have to play that game. Okay. The other thing is that you have 80% of all job seekers competing for those 20% of jobs that go through recruiters. Okay. Now, you can still play that game and win. It's possible, but you've got to know what you're doing and you got to work hard. Okay. And you've got to work smart because it's very competitive, right? The jobs on the hidden job market, they're there and you can get them. It just means that you can't discover them using an internet job search. Okay, you have to do it through networking. So learn about direct outreach. Now, if you want me to very quickly get you started, here. Okay, so this method of direct outreach, what is it and how can I get started doing it? Okay, direct outreach is a proactive job search strategy where you reach out directly to companies or individuals. So typically through email, LinkedIn. Don't do email, please. No, don't do email. Identify your targets, leverage LinkedIn, craft an engaging message, follow up, be consistent. So you're proactively going to organizations and companies that have the potential to hire someone like you. Because a lot of them, even though they don't have a job posted, they're hiring, right? That's the reality behind all of this. Now, don't take anything I'm saying, for granted. Go out and do your own independent research, and you'll see that this is true. I mean, for the last at least 15 years, I've got all my jobs and contract work in the hidden job market, right? It's real. I built a consulting business where all my clients, I got them all through the hidden job market. So it's very, very real. And I talk about it in my course, by the way, which you should get if you want to learn this stuff. Link in the description. But if you want to learn a bit more about direct outreach, I do have some free videos on my channel. One in particular that's linked in the description box below this live stream. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay, so go to the description box under this live stream, and there's a link to a video called How Successful People Get Jobs. Watch that video. That'll give you an idea of the alternative to going through recruiters, staffing agencies, things like this, okay, and accessing that hidden job market. Okay, and if you're interested in having me walk you through the rest of the process, check out that course. Where are we here? Let's see here. Oh, this thing keeps jumping around on me. I apologize for this gap in as I find my place in this big long stream here. Okay, we did that. Okay, 912 Racing says, this is going to be the #1 career development channel on YouTube if you keep this up. Thanks for your hard work, Bill. Well, thank you, 912 Racing. I certainly have the looks to take me right to the top. And I have the youth and the energy that is associated with youth, for sure. So I'm expecting good things. But no, seriously, I appreciate your compliments, and it's gratifying that you're getting something out of this. If you have any questions or anything I can help you with, let me know. And thank you for your kind words. Alex says, unfortunately, companies won't hire in Timisoara and keep the people in the factories. Weird and bad for me. Okay, Alex, get ready for me to put the screws to you. And I fully understand that you will probably leave if I try and do this, but I'm trying to make a point. How do you know this? Usually when people say stuff like this, it's their opinion based on nothing but negativity and glimpses of anecdotal experiences. You know, you worked for a crappy company, you don't hear about any other jobs, so you conclude that there are no jobs. You know, things like this. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm saying I hear this kind of stuff every day on my YouTube channel. People make these blanket statements about the world, which are false. The problem is that because they're so certain of it, it gets in the way of them realizing that, first of all, that's false. And the thing that would help them, they'd be able to get a job or they'd be able to make money or whatever, it requires them to realize that that's false and go and find those jobs that are there, just that they're not looking in the right place to see them, right? Okay, so that's the problem with this kind of thing. Now, listen, I get it. I was young once too, in a hard to believe kind of way, and I had all kinds of incorrect opinions about stuff. The younger I was, like going back to my early 20s, the more certain I felt that I knew what was going on, and coincidentally, the more mistaken I was, right? You know, so what I'd recommend is question some of these. Now, I know this is a little bit lame and a little bit kind of cheesy, but it's like, start with things like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not the be-all, end-all, okay? It does make a hell of a lot of mistakes, but it's a start, okay? So, for example, let's try this, okay? If it feels that there are no jobs right now in my industry, if I don't see any job postings, does that mean that there aren't, in fact, any jobs in my industry? How do I know that for sure? I've never asked this before. I'm curious to see what this thing says. No, it doesn't necessarily mean there are no jobs. The hidden job market is real. Many positions aren't publicly posted at all. If you're only looking at job boards or company websites, you're only seeing a small fraction of what's actually available. Many jobs are filled through referrals, internal promotions, or even cold outreach. You see this right here? I wish I could make that bigger, but my technology has let me down. It's never let me down before, but it's letting me down now. You see that? Right? Don't take my word for any of this, okay? Now, what I'd recommend you do is some of the things it's mentioning. Hidden job market, cold outreach, okay? Referrals, okay? All the stuff it's going to advise you to do. Research these things. You could start by like saying, the next question you'd say into this thing would be like, what's an informational interview, right? Start with this. This is a great starting point. It's not the be-all, end-all. Don't get all your information from it, but use it to start. Get a general idea of what's going on. Then go out, try things, corroborate things, okay? Baby steps, right? Step into this larger world. This, by the way, is how pretty much all managers get hired. Like if you want to climb the ladder above the worker level, above the professional level to like up here, management, middle management, executive management, and all the people higher up, like investors and board members, they all exclusively find gigs and opportunities through the hidden job market. They don't look at posted jobs. That's for like worker level stuff. Not to act all hoity-toity. But why I'm telling you this is because you can take advantage of this just as much as these people can, right? The only thing you have to do is to send notes that are professional, that, you know, you say appropriate things, you say professional things, the spelling and grammar are good, right? You know, and you behave professionally. And it doesn't matter who you are. You know, it doesn't matter what, you know, what your last job was or lack of a job. Anybody can do this. I know because I taught this in university. I had students do it. After having administrators tell me that they thought that, you know, what I was teaching them was unrealistic, right? I had students do all this. I had students get jobs doing this. You know, so it's real, and I encourage you to learn about it. Okay, sorry I keep going on these tangents here. Alpine's Pal says, I mean, if you really have to relate to the customer, or in the case of the employer, just give them enough to show you're not desperate, overconfident, or boasting. Well, that's a start. I mean, you have to do a lot more than just that, but that, I guess, is a start. Alex says, even with hidden job market, won't do it. Okay, well, you know, I've talked with one on LinkedIn and still no. One what? And no, hidden jobs are hard to find. How do you know? It doesn't seem like you found any, because you're probably not going about it the right way. You know, but hey, listen, don't take my word for anything, you know. Alpine's Pal says, so it works in reverse to when I put it back on the salesperson, or in the case of the interviewer, get them thinking, so they are sort of impressed that you are thinking critically. What? So it works in reverse to when I put it back on the salesperson in case of the interviewer. I'll give you a hint, Alpine's Pal. Break up your thoughts into sentences, please. Because this is all one long unbroken sentence. It's like a stream of consciousness. Okay? One thought per sentence, short sentences, then no one will ever have to go back and reread something you've written because they don't understand it the first time. Okay? Just a little tip. You don't have to take it, but if you do, you will certainly benefit from it. He who speaks first loses, meaning the person who slips up or gets mad, etc. No, wrong. That's not what that refers to. That refers to something else very specific. That refers to negotiation, and that's flimsy at best in negotiation also. It doesn't apply to a job interview or a sales pitch. Rourke Ponce says, I have a second job interview scheduled that is from the hidden job market. A friend heard this company had a need, and since I talked to her about looking for work, she recommended me. Okay, that's a start. I wish you every bit of luck. That is the, I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying that's the most basic way of tapping the hidden job market. You know, someone you know, a friend knows of an opportunity, right? Those are less common than you would think, right? But hey, a lead is a lead, so I wish you every bit of luck. Alex Rosca says, I will talk more on hidden market with more HR folks from factories to see. Sure, Alex, just so you know, that's probably going to be completely useless. It's probably going to be completely useless. Do you know why? Because, you see, recruiters, HR people, they deal exclusively with the posted job market. That's pretty much what they do, right? Hidden job market, that's where you don't go through a recruiter, right? That's what distinguishes it. Now, if you don't believe me, look at the very last comment that I was just reading, like literally 10 seconds ago, from Rourke, right? Who says, and I'm going to read this again, I have a second job interview scheduled that is from the hidden job market. A friend heard this company had a need, and since I talked to her about looking for work, she recommended me, right? This is from a friend. This is not from a recruiter. You see how that works, right? The job isn't posted, but the hiring manager, who is a manager of some department or some work group within the organization, has a need to hire someone. They have too much work for them to do, right? They need another person on their team to handle this volume of work, right? The manager sees that. The manager has the ability to hire a person. They can allocate some of their budget, right? You know what I mean? To that. That's a business decision that they can make. And they haven't posted a job. They haven't contacted a recruiter. They're just thinking, okay, I really need to hire someone soon, right? Now, presumably, and I'm making an assumption here, Rourke can perhaps clarify if Rourke chooses to. This friend that Rourke has, I'm assuming, is an employee in that work group, right? They're not a recruiter. There's someone in the group. So they are, or there's someone close to the hiring manager. Maybe they're a peer of the hiring manager. That could be the case also. But in any case, they know of the intention to hire. They know they have a need, right? We're swamped with work. We're going to have to hire someone soon, you know? So that's the connection, right? There's no recruiters involved in this, right? So what Rourke is doing is Rourke has gotten his friend to tell the hiring manager, listen, I know someone. I have a friend called Rourke who would be perfect for this. You know, shall I tell them? Shall I tell Rourke to send you his resume, right? I personally recommend them. I think they're great for this, you know? And then it's up to the hiring manager to see if they're going to talk to Rourke, right? Now, people are interesting. People do all kinds of things, but all things being equal, a manager, imagine if you were the manager, would you say, no, even though I work with you and I trust your judgment, I'm not going to take your suggestion for like this candidate. I'm not going to interview Rourke. Instead, I'm going to get the job posted so I can interview strangers. Does that sound logical to you? Right? I'm going to pay a recruiter one way or another, whether the recruiter is internal or external. I have to pay for them in some way, shape, or form because they're working for me. You know, they're going to go out and find candidates. They're going to coordinate job interviews. They're going to filter resumes. They're doing all that for me and my department, right? So I'm not going to take my trusted employee's personal recommendation. I'm not even going to talk to that person. Instead, I'm going to go and talk to strangers. Right? Does that seem logical to you? No, of course not. The strangers are more risky. These people could be axe murderers. They could be crazy. They could be criminals. Like you have no idea who these people are. They could be lying about everything on their resume. You'd need all kinds of background checks to try and get to the bottom of it. You know, it's a much more promising lead to take the recommendation of someone that is on your team that you work with very closely, that you trust their judgment. They are staking their reputation with you by recommending this person, right? You're not going to hire them because of this person's recommendation, but you're going to interview them. You're going to give them a chance based on this person's recommendation, right? There are no recruiters involved, okay? So once again, Alex, do your own research. Don't just go to a recruiter and say like, you know, is the hidden job market real or, you know, what should I do? The recruiter has vested interest. They're going to say you should only get a job through me and recruiters, right? That's what their incentive structure is, okay? So I'll let you figure it out. You have free will, you have judgment. Go and figure it out. Okay, where was I here? That was Rourke, that was Alex. Uni says, I've been placed in the ABC organization. When the boss gives multiple tasks, how to remember the task. Okay. That's the whole question. I don't understand that. I don't know what you mean. When the boss gives you several tasks, how do you remember what tasks they gave you? I don't know. Turn on your brain, you know, try to remember something, write it down, you know, go back and ask for clarification. I would have thought that's self-evident. But if there's more to that question, please let me know. Okay. Alpine's Pal says, I had a cool/weird dream of a businessman telling me there's always something that needs improvement in this world. I just felt excited. I got off on it again. Yeah, that's always the case. We have an overabundance of stuff, right? Every industry, there's like a lot of choice and there's a lot of things going on. Unfortunately, most of it is crap. there's very few stuff out there that's truly delightful, that's like really, really good. The world never tires of like really good things. There's always room for someone to come in and make a really good version of what's already there, right? There's usually a lot of choices already, but they're all pretty lackluster, mundane, right? That's why you can come into any industry, you can produce almost any product or any service, okay? And there's room for you if it's good. If it's mediocre, it's kind of meh, there's probably not room for you. But if it's good, there's always room for you. Now, remember, good is not your opinion of it, it's your customer's opinion of it. So that's the catch. So your job is to make something that your customers or potential customers agree is good. That's your job. You do that, fortune follows. Due to overthinking, I forget. Okay, well, don't think so much. That seems to be the solution that's built in. Alpine's Pal says, I don't remember if it was on this channel or not, but one comment said a job interview is an honest conversation between two liars. That wouldn't be something I would say. I don't believe in stupid little quotes that like try and approximate a general principle that may or may not apply universally and usually doesn't. So that's probably another channel you might have heard that on. I hate quotes for a variety of reasons. Don't just take someone's quote and then like live your life as if, that's a guiding principle. That's a recipe for being misled. Okay. Think for yourself. Remember, there's nuance to almost everything, right? You know what I mean? Learn the principles, and you learn them by, in the beginning, you listen to advice, but then you go out and you do things, you try things, right? That makes you an authority on it. Nobody can tell you something can't be done if you've done it, okay? So that's the thing. There's a time when listening to advice ends, and then you go out and you do things, right? And then that's how you continue the learning journey. It's me, says, do you recommend adding my personal story in the About section of LinkedIn if it shows personal growth and progression toward where I am today? Sure, I don't see how that can do any harm. I don't think that's really a very huge win. I don't think it's going to make like all the difference in the world or anything. But there's nothing wrong with that. People are not interested in you. And when I say you, I mean every one of you and me. They're not interested in me. They're not interested in you. They're interested in themselves. That's all they care about, right? So when they're looking for to hire someone, right? They only care about what they're looking for. They don't care about what you've done in your past. You might have done this amazing, wonderful thing, but it's not what they need right now. It's not what they're looking for right now. So they don't care. You know what I mean? They're looking for someone to sweep the floors, right? They're interested in knowing if you've swept floors before, if you're suited for that kind of work, and if you're easy to work with. That's what they're interested in. Now, you may have 2 PhDs, but you enjoy sweeping the floor. So you go to the interview and you tell them all about these PhDs you have, and you try and convince them yes, I've got these PhDs. I can bring all this wealth of knowledge and ability to my ability to sweep the floor. I can, by looking at the shape of the room, I can intuitively calculate mathematically by inspection, the optimum way of sweeping the floor, how you would maneuver through the room so you never retrace your steps, and you're always in a position where you can get the maximum reach for any given position you're standing in. I can calculate that just by looking at the room. And that means that, I can sweep the floor in a way more efficiently than anybody else, right? And they go, okay, whatever, but have you swept floors before? You know what I mean? Unfortunately, that's how things go, right? So the way to win at this game is you find out what they care about, and then you speak directly to those things and only those things, right? It's not about you telling your story because nobody cares. It's about you serving them, right? That's how anything becomes popular. It's realizing it's not about you, it's about them, right? You might be proud of things, and you're human. We are all proud of accomplishments and things. God knows I've got enough like things peppered around the wall of my, office. I'm proud of things. But the reality is that a lot of people, they don't give a rat's ass about 90% of that stuff. So does it make sense for me to like tell them all about it? No, it doesn't, because it'll fall on deaf ears, So I just want to make sure you understand this principle. And once again, if this is new information for you and you're kind of a bit taken aback by this and you're kind of very skeptical, don't take my word for it. Go and look this stuff up, and then go and try things and probe to see if this principle applies. And that will inform you of what you need to do going forward, including updating your LinkedIn profile and the types of things that you want people to see. And I wish you Godspeed, my friend. Alpine's pal, I see what you mean. I have my own imagination. To me, it's just oddly makes sense to me. Another friend of mine said that you don't have to let the company treat you like a weak ant you bring value to. Sure. Yeah, whatever. So what does that mean? You don't have to let them treat you this. So okay, what's the action that they're recommending? You quit? You go and you slam your fist down on your boss's desk and dictate to them how you're going to need to be treated from now on? What's the recommended action there? That's what I'm wondering. Rourke says she was a peer of the general manager of the business. He was just talking to her about not getting any good candidates from posted job listings. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was trying to convince, I think it was Alex, that the hidden job market is something where you don't go through the HR organization, right? It's unintuitive to a lot of job seekers, especially young job seekers. You would think, oh, any job, you should go through a recruiter. Well, no, it isn't. Now, if you don't believe that, I'm pretty damn sure they've had a lot of examples in movies. Think of how people have gotten jobs in movies. Have you ever seen someone go and demand a job, in a movie? I think I saw that on an episode of The Simpsons, last week or something. It was how Homer got his job at the nuclear power plant or something. He went to Mr. Burns' office and slammed his fist down on the desk or something and, said I will be the employer. I will be the perfect employee. You can treat me like crap and I'll never complain. What? It was a joke, of course, but there's been so many movies based on real life stories of people that have done great things where they just go and talk to the person in question and are given a job, The point I'm trying to make is that the hidden job market, you go through hiring managers, not recruiters. That's a key point. Sorry, I keep having to adjust the brightness of my cameras constantly because the sun is coming out and going away. Yeah, here we go. No sooner have I adjusted it than it flips again. I think it's God. God hates me. So he does this. Let's see. Okay. Of course, this jumped on me again. So where was I here? You should know your value, have confidence in yourself. Well, confidence comes from, from having done stuff, right? No one can tell me I can't do something when I've already done it, right? If you've never done it, it's hard to have confidence that you can. Then it becomes a psychological kind of thing, like a motivational, inspirational kind of thing, touchy-feely kind of stuff, right? But true confidence comes from, I'm genuinely not worried about this because I've done it 1,000 times before. Think of an Olympic athlete. They have to run a race or something in the Olympics. Aren't they nervous that, there's like 1 million people watching them? They're worried they might fall flat on their face. No, they're not. They're generally not, because they have done nothing but run races for like the last 10 years or whatever every day. It's like they get a confidence, that I'll be able to, I got this, because here, you know what I'm going to do? Okay, this requires radical measures here. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, I'm going to switch to my other camera here. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to adjust this one so it's darker. Here we go. And then I'll just have to toggle cameras. That's all I'll do. And then, you see, it's this kind of thinking that only a former CEO/engineer can possibly do. Yeah, there we go. Okay, right. Sorry for the inconvenience here. Let's get on with this. Okay, so that's where confidence comes from. So go and do stuff. If you want to get confidence for job interviews, do the mock interviews. Get a friend or family member, or hire a career coach, whatever your pleasure is, and do practice interviews over and over and over again. Just take like a week or maximum 2 weeks. Just do a bunch of this. And for the rest of your life, you will be confident in job interviews because you've done so many of them. You know what I mean? Of course, the problem now is I don't know what camera to look at. That's the problem. Okay, so that's this one. And then that one is this one. Okay, gotcha. Okay. 2, not 2. Okay. I hate quotes. Yeah, I actually did an entire video on my second channel, The Company's Expert 2. This thing here, Company's Expert 2. Talking about that. Like the way I've seen people misuse it. Like, for example, people will, they'll try and win an argument with you by saying, oh, there's this quote, and it's, it says like, always follow your bliss, Steve Jobs or something like that. And it's like they think that like that carries more authority than their opinion because they're just parroting someone else. Now, Steve Jobs is famous. Does that necessarily mean that everything he said is true? No, he was wrong a hell of a lot of the time. Most famous people were wrong more often than they were right. You know what I'm saying? So just saying a thing that Steve Jobs said this, therefore it must be true. That's crap. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of these. And then the other thing is that they're taking the quote completely out of context. Like, so that may be true when it comes to like, I don't know, salary negotiation, but does that mean it's true in public speaking? No. You know what I'm saying? So like there's all kinds of problems with quotes, right? So that's why I don't like to dissect a quote. People just present me with quotes and it's almost like they expect me not to be able to argue back because like, oh, Winston Churchill said this, or, Gandhi said this. And it's like, I don't care. Gandhi was talking about this other thing like 80 years ago. You know what I mean? He wasn't talking about this now. So that's not any kind of argument, nor is it correct. You know what I mean? Right? And then they think that's supposed to shut you down. And it's like, no, get some original thoughts. Don't just like parrot other people. You don't need to win arguments. It's not about arguments. I'm here to try to turn people on to new ideas. If I can, great. Am I right about everything? No. Do I understand your exact situation? No. But maybe if I explain some things, you might get something out of that sort of sends you in a different direction. And that's where you find stuff that really helps you. That's what I'm hoping to achieve. I'm not interested in arguing with anyone. I'm pretty damn sure of what I know, and what I know may not apply to you. So, it's all good. Prime says, Hey, Bill, do you remember me? Yes, I remember the name. I remember Prime. You were on here quite a lot, maybe a month or two ago, I think, something like that. Welcome back. I hope that doesn't mean that you got a job, but then you lost it and now you're back. I hope that's not why you're back. It's Me says, thank you for the thoughtful explanation, sir. I appreciate the info. You're absolutely welcome, It's Me. And best of luck to you. Avery says, except for my first job, all my jobs were from recommendations from family or friends or coworkers. Only reason I got rehired at the current job is because a manager and a salesperson wanted me back. Yeah, so those are great examples of the hidden job market. You know, like, I don't know what the details were, but, you know, sort of hearing about things and people recommending you for it, that's the hidden job market. Avery says, and let me be clear, the hidden job market is composed of many different things. Many, many things. This is one of many ways to access the hidden job market. Okay, so it's not exclusively this, right? In fact, I did a video about a month ago called How I'd Get a Job, and that in that video, it's like 45 minutes, I walk you through 11 different methods of getting jobs. You know, I recommended for me, I would do 5 of them. 2 main ones and then 3 others, kind of. But I wouldn't do the others. That's just me personally. This is like one of the 11, just like, you know, knowing people, reaching out to people you know, saying, hey, are they hiring where you are? You know, could you use someone like me who can solve this problem? You know, that kind of thing. That's one thing of many, right? Yeah, so that's Avery. Avery says, my first part-time job was the result of volunteer work where I demonstrated the skill, managing WordPress, that I would listen to a local person from that city. None of these were HR. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of examples. Whoever it was it Alex that was like talking about that? Alex has taken his steps into, or his or her steps into a larger world. And I wish you every bit of luck, Alex, if you're still here. There's a lot of examples here, like Avery is being kind enough to volunteer some stories that they did. Keish Richard says, yeah, pun intended, says, God loves you, Bill, and is always with you. Don't joke about God's love for you. Keish, thank you very much. I do appreciate it, but I believe that God has a sense of humor. And if ever I go and meet God, I hope that he and I will be able to crack some jokes together and get along really well. So I think humor is a gift from God, and you can always inject humor into stuff, I think. But I appreciate the sentiment, and thank you. Alpine's Pal says, no, not at all. It's more like you want to be respected and don't have to be overwhelmed when you see something that's off. I noticed 2 things during the stream. 1, we can have our own opinions and understandings, but what's more important is actually using that to land a job. Yeah, and everything works some of the time. I regularly get comments on my YouTube channel where people say, you know, well, I told them to piss off and I got the job. So, you know, it's like, no. I mean, I don't doubt that did work for you, but typically that doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? You know? So we're playing the statistical odds that if you tell them to F off, you probably won't be offered the job, right? But there are always exceptions, right? And that's the maddening part. Prime says, yeah, that is why I'm back. The last job didn't work out. Oh, that sucks. As I had some communication issues with the CEO. Yeah, those CEOs can be real bastards, you know, like worthless jackasses to a man or a woman. You know, that's their problem, and they know it too. And, you know, the sooner we get rid of these people, the better that we can all live a happy life, free of war and tragedy, you know. So if you have any ideas how we can bring about that world, you let me know. As he was telling me to make decisions, he hired me as a junior. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry about that, Prime. Hopefully it's onward and upward. You'll find yourself something that was even better than this piece of crap thing that didn't work out. So let me know if you have any specific questions and we can try and get you there as soon as possible. Alpine's Pal says, too, a lot of the things you said today are kind of the same thing repeated in different ways. Ask ChatGPT, use your brain, hidden job market. It shows that I need more practice on applying the skills. Absolutely, Alpine's Pal. You've been on here for quite a while, so you've been to a lot of my live streams. And you're absolutely right. There isn't an infinite number of new principles at play here. I have purposefully not talked about some of the finer points of how to do direct outreach because it's just hard to get into. You can't introduce 2 of the 30 principles and have people gain from that, because, like, for example, what are some of the things going on in the job interview? Well, you need to prepare. That's good advice. That's a principle. Preparation tends to lead to better results, right? You also need to wear clothes. Wearing clothes usually leads to a better outcome. You won't get thrown out of the building. They won't carry you out in a net. They won't call the police, right? You know what I'm saying? Now, if you're explaining this to people that have never done this stuff before, and they say, well, I did what you advised and I didn't get the job. Well, it turns out that they showed up for the job at the bank dressed in nothing but Speedos, because no one actually told them you have to dress appropriately, right? This is the problem. In order to really clue people in about how this stuff works so that they can follow it and do it, you have to start with all the principles, right? Now, I'm giving you an obviously silly example, but hopefully you understand the principle, right? Just saying, like, this principle in isolation, I'm going to put that into a video and then have people watch it. The problem is most people will only watch that video. They won't watch any of the others on any of the other principles. And they'll come back and they'll say, well, I tried this thing that you told me to do and it didn't work, right? It's like, yeah, because it's incomplete, So that's the problem I have with teaching the hidden job market. That's why I put it into a course that you can't see now. There we go. Because you really have to sit people down and say, here's all the principles. You have to learn all of these. Now go out and do it, right? You got people doing stuff that I advise them to do on LinkedIn, right? Sending messages to CEOs, to managers, to, all kinds of people, like, to try and get a job. And you look at this person's profile, and their profile has a picture of them, like, drunk at a party with, like, 2 other people in the picture all partying. Like, that undermines anything you're doing on LinkedIn. You know what I mean? So you've got to, like, start at the beginning and, like, here's all the things you need to do in order, So anyway, that's the reason why I can't really go too much into that stuff. I also like to keep some stuff back in my course, and it's through necessity, actually, not convenience, that I'm doing that. But a lot of the other stuff, it's like, yeah, there's a limited number of principles out there that will get you somewhere. That's actually good news for most people. Prime says, and when I made or I didn't add something because he didn't tell me to do it, it was a bit bitter and telling me to think like a user. Yeah, so it just didn't work out, I guess. And in the end, I started building him a platform from scratch, but it was trying to do it fast, and the end date was near, but he would change his mind and tell me he wanted it done a different way, and because of that, I lost. Yeah, just a difference in work style and communication style is what it sounds like. Rourke, Bill's advice has helped me immensely, but it has been things I've had to work on and apply and practice. So much practice. Yeah, and the thing is, this is the same sort of stuff that generally is what I learned. It's overlaps a lot with, like, climbing the corporate ladder, having positions of increasing responsibility, being able to, direct groups of people or teams of people, that are larger and larger, where, your influence over it is more abstracted, the higher you go. right? There's more layers between you and where the actual work gets done. You deal with less and less details. Information is summarized more till it gets back to you, and then the information you put out is then elaborated upon by others more as it gets down to where the work is done. So a lot of these skills, and also they're the skills of an introvert learning to survive and thrive in an extrovert's world. That's the other part of this. Job search is one of those things. If you know no one and you're not connected to anyone, it's very hard to get a job, right? On the other hand, if you know 1 billion people personally, and you hang out with them all the time, and you're always in communication with them, and you love nothing more than building relationships and maintaining relationships with other people, you won't have that much problem getting a job. You know what I'm saying? It's an interconnected world. And introverts, like some of us here, a lot of us, we have to take on some of the traits of extroverts just to succeed, right? Because some of those traits are useful, right? They can be very annoying, but they are useful, right? And that's a struggle that a lot of introverts have. Never is it uncovered in a clearer way than in job search. You know what I'm saying? You need to be connected to find leads. Then, in order to sell yourself, you need to be able to communicate directly to people, like a job interview, and be good in the interview. And it depends on soft skills like rapport and clear communication, stuff like that. Understanding their needs and then speaking directly to their needs. These are a lot of soft skills. They're not rocket science. Introverts can kick ass at this stuff. They really can. It's child's play compared to a lot of things that introverts know. But you still have to develop a respect for it, and then you still have to learn it, right? So a lot of the stuff I talk about overlaps with that stuff too. Okay, so Prime was talking about their boss here, and now he wants me to work as a freelancer for him, which is weird. Yeah, that is weird. So they let you go or something, and then now they want you to come back and work as a freelancer. That is kind of strange. If it didn't work out, you would almost want to not do that on principle. You know what I mean? You might not have the luxury of being able to do that. You might have to take what you can get. And it's maybe a financial lifeline so that even though you're out of a job, you still have freelance work coming in. So you don't want to burn your bridges, but it is kind of a bit strange. That makes me think that the CEO might have been doing this by design, right? It might have been an effort to get you to leave, right? They don't want to fire you, but they want to get you, they would love for you to leave so they can hire you as a freelancer, right? I would not put it past people to do that. I've seen that. What should I put on my resume because I only worked there for 2 months? Well, that depends on who you're dealing with, right? It's hard to know what to do unless you understand the objective, So if you know what job you're going up for and you know who you're dealing with to get it, and you know what they require of someone in that job and what they're looking for, then you kind of know what to put on your resume. But unless you know that stuff, it's kind of hard to say. Rourke says, and I can say that Bill's Get Hired course is great. I'm going to complete that and then go through his MBA course next. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the endorsement, Rourke. And I hope that, you get a lot out of it. The MBA course, that can be very quick or it could be very long. It depends how deep you want to go. If you do want to go as deep as an actual MBA, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time and a lot of material. It's the same amount of material you would do in a 2-year full-time university program, right? But if you just want to skip right through it, only learn about the stuff that's interesting to you, then it'll go a lot quicker. David Peterson says, Part 1, I had a 4-hour interview session with the higher-ups of a small IT department. They expressed they wanted to get to know me to see if I was a good fit. They wanted to know me. I'm just going to do all this in order. Part 2, they even took me to lunch. I prepared by recording, I guess by recording myself on the phone, writing and rewriting Q&A and researching the software. Okay, part 3, haven't heard back, but we'll follow up with them on Friday. Okay, let me know what your question is. Alpine's Pal says, you give a lot of great advice. I know it's kind of annoying to have to repeat yourself and answer the same basic question, but you're awesome and we want to be just as awesome as you. You guys are just as awesome as me. You know, you're even more awesome than I am because you're young, and I'm sure you're a lot thinner than I am, and you've got a lot of energy, you know, and you've got a burning desire to learn. You're here, you know. It's like, I'm old, and I envy young people that have the energy and the drive, and, you know, they're not as cynical, you know, although some young people really are today, but we can forget about that for right now. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of advantages to being young. There's advantages to being any age, really. You know, when you're older, you don't have the energy, you don't have the open mind, you don't have the capacity to learn as much, but, you know, you have wisdom, you have knowledge, you know the solutions, how to do all these different things because you've spent a lifetime building that up. That's the advantage of older people. Younger people, you know, you guys have the energy, you have the drive, you have the ability, the desire to change the world. Old people don't want to change the world. We just want to not care about everything. Young people, you guys want to change the world, and you have the ability to do it. You know, it's a fantastic thing. Don't let these clowns and these employers beat that out of you, you know? Like, what was the thing? You know, minds are dulled by toil. You know, like that's a real thing. You know, that's why I encourage people, you know, learn about entrepreneurship, learn about, like, you know, business and stuff, you know, because if you understand money and you understand how to make money and how to create value and stuff like this, you can work for yourself. You could create wealth. Like you invent something, you refine something, you improve something, and then you have the ability to go out and sell it, to be able to, like, turn everyone on to your idea, you know, and create a bit of a buzz around it and make it popular. You know, those are incredible skills. You combine that with the energy and drive of youth and the belief that you can do anything. It's like, it's an unbeatable combination, you know? That's all I'll say here. That's why I talk about entrepreneurship. But let's get back to how to get a job. That's kind of more immediate for a lot of people. And thank you for your words there, Alpine's Pal. Invincible says, college placement is going on. I stutter a lot during interviews, and I reject myself in my mind, and my interview doesn't go well. Communication gets worse since I'm not sure about the skills I have. Okay, so I'm not sure what should I do. It feels like no matter how much I try, I can't change myself. Like my skill are technical, but I get conscious, I blank out even though I know those things. Okay. I have to wrap this up soon, but I want to respond to Invincible. Here's what I'd say. Invincible, first of all, which camera is this? It's this one, right? Okay. Invincible, you're awesome. Okay, know that. The other thing you need to know is that, congratulations, you're normal. You know, when people are young, this is exactly what they go through. They're not confident. They're lost when it comes to things like job interviews. They're nervous. They're out of their comfort zone. They never had to do anything like this before, really. They don't know the person on the other side of the table. They don't know how they think, what's going on through their head, what's going through their head. Oh, I apologize for too much talking. Okay. Here's what, in my opinion, you might want to do. Okay. First of all, okay. Starting with my YouTube channel, I have a couple of videos. The first video I have is how to get a job with no experience. That might be relevant to you. Watch that video, okay? Then, after you learn about the basic principles of job interviews and how to prepare for them and how to get the questions right. Practice. Doing a job interview is like most things in life. People are not instantly good at it. Nobody's instantly good. You have to work at it. Practice makes perfect. The good news is that if you practice a little, you get good pretty quickly, okay? So don't beat yourself up because you're just not instantly good. It's like learning a sport or learning a musical instrument. You don't just pick up an instrument for the first time, like a bassoon or something, an electric bassoon, connect it up to a Marshall stack with a curly guitar cord. You're not instantly good. You can't play Jimi Hendrix, the Jimi Hendrix of bassoon. You're just not that person. I'm sorry to say. It would be pretty cool if you were. But you work up to that, all social skills are kind of like this, especially if you're an introvert. They don't come naturally. You have to manually learn them and then you practice them. But what you notice is that they're actually not rocket science. So with a little bit of practice, you end up getting good, okay? So that's what I recommend. There's sort of two phases here. And I think it's Alpine's Pal is going to rake me over the coals for saying this, because I've said it before. Phase 1, learn the questions they ask you in job interviews, learn the right answers, figure out what answers you're going to say, right? Memorize them. Then phase 2 is you work with somebody. You do practice interviews. Just like when you learn a sport, you go and you do practices, right? Where you play the sport, but without like an audience, just kind of to yourselves, you do exercises. That's how this works too. It's exactly the same principle. Get a friend or family member to pretend to be the job interviewer, and they're going to ask you questions, and then you give the answers, and then you just keep doing this over and over again. And once you do 40 or 50 of these things, you'll kick ass. You'll know exactly what to say. It'll be memorized, and you'll start to get confident. Okay, so that's how you do this. The kind of sucky part is you got to put time into it, right? But if you do put time into it, you improve very quickly, okay? So that's all you need to know, Invincible. You're going to be fine. You just do this like you do everything else, and you're going to climb this mountain, and you're going to not have to fear job interviews for the rest of your life, because you will know how to do them, and you'll feel confident, and you won't feel a lot of anxiety, okay? Prime says also, how should I explain the situation if I get asked about my last job at the next interview I will go to? Okay, I'm going to answer this, and then I think this is pretty much going to be my last question before I take a break, because I'm coming back in 20 minutes. I've got another live stream scheduled on my channel. Okay, so we're going to take a short intermission, but I'll answer this. So if I get asked about my last job at the next interview, they're going to say, basically, why did you leave your last job? Okay, this camera now. Why did you leave your last job? Very simple. Remember this expression. I was ready to do more. That's what you say, right? The last thing you want to do is talk about how your last job ended, because one way or another, it probably didn't end well, right? I mean, maybe it did, but for a lot of people, it didn't. Either you left, or you were laid off, or you were terminated, right? So, the only one that's kind of like not super bad to mention is saying laid off, especially if a lot of other people were laid off with you. That really shows that there was nothing wrong with you as an employee. You were a good employee. They just laid off everybody, right? Had no reflection on you as an employee. But the others, certainly if you were fired, or even if you left, that can be bad in the sense that it signals that you're the type of person that leaves things. They might not want to hire you, because if they hire you, they expect you to leave, So instead of talking about negatives, just say, well, it's like, I was ready to do more. I did this kind of work, but, I've got that down, and I'm ready to move more into an area that does this and this and this. I do this kind of work. I use these types of abilities. And oh, look, that just coincidentally describes this job, that I've just applied to and that you're interviewing me for. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a job that, really does that. You maybe don't connect the dots. You let them do that. But that's how you answer that question. Okay. Thank you to Invincible and David and everybody else, Alpine's Pal, everyone. Check out my course, the Get Hired course right there. If you want to take this further, you want to learn how to tap the hidden job market, you want to learn that with me. That course does two things. It teaches you how to get hired in the posted job market, going through recruiters with resumes and interviews, but it also shows you how to get hired in the hidden job market with things like direct outreach and informational interviews. Okay, so check out that course. There's a link in the description below this live stream. And as with all my courses, I've done videos that are like FAQ videos where I explain how the course works and what you get and all that kind of stuff. So it's as transparent as possible. Also check out this course here, Write Like a Professional. If you want to learn advanced communication skills, you want to be seen as a contender to be promoted, and being given more responsibility, and you start to move up the ladder and all this kind of stuff. If that's what you're into, communication skills are definitely one thing you have to tack on to climb up on every level. You have to learn a little bit more to be seen as an option for that kind of thing. So check that out. And then finally, it's probably less relevant for people here, but if you want to learn business, of course, being the scientific study of how to make money, that's what it is. It's a very useful thing to know for several reasons. If you want to learn that, check out that course. That's the best bang for the buck around to learn business. So I will be back in about 15 minutes on this channel. You guys are awesome. Thanks for joining me today. I will see you soon. Take care.